What's up everybody and welcome to a new video. And in this video we'll continue to go over my notes for the editor on VS Code. And this time we're going to cover running code and then the side notes here. So let's start with running code. Here the first note is about language specific functionality. And I'm going to demonstrate that using Python. So if you're using a different language, then there might be less, same or more functionality available. And here then the first point is about the play button in the editor toolbar. So to show that, I've prepared here a file. So let's put this over here. And now if you click this play button, then it simply runs this file here in the integrated terminal. And then here next to this file is this drop-down arrow where you have here these different options available. So the first one is is called run Python file. So that's the one that we just executed. So this runs the Python file in the integrated terminal. Then the next one is run Python file in dedicated terminal. So what this does is it creates here this dedicated terminal for this file, and then every time you run the command, the file will then get executed just in this terminal here. So for example, if I open here another file and then here also run that in the dedicated terminal, then again it creates a new terminal. And now if I go back to file 1, for example, and then run that in the dedicated terminal again, then it jumps back to this file 1 terminal. And here just a side note, if you use this run Python file command again, then it actually uses here this non-dedicated terminal. So a use case for this dedicated terminal would be, for example, to run a file in the background. So for example, here I have prepared a file. So let's run this here in the dedicated terminal. And then you can use here this non-dedicated terminal to do some other things. So for example, in that you can then run here file 1, or let's also run file 2, or you can just use your regular command line commands. Okay, so, and then while you do that, this Python file here in the background is still running. Okay, so let's kill this now. And this is how you can use this button here to run the files. And then here lastly, you can also start a debugger with this drop-down arrow. So the first option here is to debug the Python file. So this simply starts the debugger, and we've already covered that in a different video. So I will put the link to that into the video description. And then here with the second option, you can debug using launch.json. And we've also covered launch.json. So I will also put a video to that link into the video description. Okay, so this is how you can use this play button in the editor toolbar. So then the next note states that the Python REPL can be invoked via the command palette. And there are two different types. You can start the terminal REPL, or you can start the native Python REPL. So let's start with the terminal REPL. Therefore, let's go here to the command palette and then search for REPL. And then here start terminal REPL. So what this does, it creates a new terminal and then starts the REPL within the terminal. So now let's wait for that to start so that we can write some code. So here it has started, and now let's simply write here print hello world, and then let's run this. So this is the terminal REPL. So now let's look at this native Python REPL. So therefore again, command palette, and then here start native Python REPL. So this is what it looks like, and it has several advantages over this terminal REPL. First one is that you here have syntax highlighting. So for example, if I say for I in range 5, then you can see that we have here the syntax highlighting, and you have also access to IntelliSense. So for example, if I type here PR and then press Control space, then we get here this list of options. So let's pick here print. You can also access parameter hints. For example, then here by pressing Control Shift space, then you can see here those parameters. And now if I run this code, then you can see that it gets depicted in these Jupyter-like cells here, where you see the input and the output of the code. And then lastly, here with this variables button, you can open here this REPL variables view. Okay, so this is how you can use the REPL or the Python REPL to run code. So then the next note is about running just a selection or line of code. And to show how that works, let's go back to this file here. And then here I have prepared some more code. And here now let's say we don't want to run the whole file, but we only want to run this first for loop here. So to do that, simply highlight that and then right click it. And then here you have the command run selection or line in Python terminal. And the keyboard shortcut is here Shift Enter. So if you run this command, then this opens the Python REPL in the terminal and then runs the code in that Python REPL. So this is how you can run just a selection or line of code. And here I also have some side notes. Namely, the first one is that if you want to use the run Python file command again, so this one here, then you need to first exit the REPL here. So for example, if I click this button, then we get this error message here. So therefore then we need to exit the REPL. So let's exit that. And then we can actually use this command here again. And this is also true the other way around. So for example, if I now highlight here this for loop again and then press Shift Enter, then we get here an error message. So therefore, if you want to run the selection again, you need to enter the Python REPL again. So if we enter that and then run this code, then it again works. Or what you also can do is you can simply kill the terminal and then create a new terminal. So that is this first side note here. So then the next note is about Smart Send. Namely, if there isn't a selection, Smart Send will send the smallest runnable code, a block of code around the line where the cursor is placed. And then it places the cursor at the next line of code. So for example, if I place here the cursor on this first for loop here and now press Shift Enter, what happens is it executes the whole for loop. And then here the cursor is placed at this place. However, if I put it, for example, just on this print statement here and then press Shift Enter, then it only executes here this print statement. And if I put, for example, the cursor on this print statement here and now run Shift Enter, then it actually runs again the whole for loop. And that's not because this J wasn't initiated, because now if I run it again, so Shift Enter, again it runs the whole for loop. And you can turn this off via this setting here. So therefore let's open here the settings. And now here let's turn this off. So now again, if I put the cursor here on this print J statement and then press Shift Enter, then it actually just executes that print statement. Okay, so this is Smart Send. Then the next side note is that the code can also be sent to the native Python REPL. And therefore you can use this setting here. So let's search for that. And now let's here enable this. And now if I, for example, put here the cursor, or let's select here this first for loop and now press Shift Enter, then it actually opens the Python or the native Python REPL and executes the code in there. Okay, so these are my side notes. And with that now we've covered all the notes I wanted to cover with respect to language specific functionality. So now let's go over the general functionality, i.e. this is functionality that should be available for all languages. So here the first point is to simply manually run the file via the integrated terminal. So for example, let's run this file 1 here in the terminal. So therefore let's exit the REPL. And now I need to go to the desktop here because that's where the file is. And now let's run this file 1. So therefore we simply say Python and then file 1 and now enter. And now we can run this file. So that's the first way how you can run code. Then the second one would be here to use the command palette and then this run active file in active terminal command. This then needs the so-called shebang. So for example, if we try to run this file here without a shebang, let's go here to the command palette and then here's this command, run active file in active terminal. So this doesn't work. So therefore then I have prepared here this shebang. So if you add this at the beginning of the file and now run the command, then now it's working. So that's the second option. And here I also have a side note, namely this command runs in the active terminal, regardless if the terminal is dedicated or a non-dedicated terminal. So for example, if I create here again a dedicated terminal for this file 1, then let's wait for that to start. Okay, so now it has run. So now this one here is active, and now if I run this command again, run in active terminal, then it runs it in this terminal. However, if I, for example, activate this terminal and then run the command, then it runs the code in this terminal. Okay, so this is this side node. And now let's get to the last option here, which is via the menu bar, via this run without debugging command. So to show that, let's go back to this file, and here let's set a breakpoint, just to show that it ignores those breakpoints, and then let's run that without debugging. So this then creates here the debug console, and now let's again wait for this program to start. So now you can see that the program is running, and here it ignores those breakpoints, and here you also have the option to restart the program or to stop the program. Okay, so those are the three options that you have in general for running code, and with that now we've covered all the points that I wanted to cover with respect to running code. So now let's go over the side notes here, and the first one is about the overflow menu in the editor toolbar. So here the first option is to show opened editors. So this simply shows the opened editors of the active group. Then next here you have the command to close all. So this closes all the editors except pinned ones. So for example, if I pin this first editor here and then say close all, then it closes all the editors except this pinned one here. And then after that we have close saved. So this is basically the same. So this closes all saved editors except pinned ones. And then here we have this option to enable preview editors. And we already talked about this command in the previous video, so I will put the link to that video into the video description. Then here we have the command to maximize the group. And here with this button you can then toggle that off again. Next there is then the command to lock the group. And what this does is it prevents any new files from being opened in this group here. So for example, if I try to open here a new file, even if I have this file here or this editor active, if I now open a new file, it doesn't open into this group here, unless you actively drag and drop the file into that locked group. And the potential use case for this functionality here is if you want to keep here a file open while you explore other files, so that they don't replace this editor here. And another use case would be if you use here a terminal in the editor area and you don't want that terminal to be replaced by other files. So then if you want to toggle this off again, then simply click this lock button here. And then lastly, there's also a related setting to these locked group functions, or this locked group functionality. Namely, it's this auto lock groups here. And as it says here, if an editor matching one of the listed types is opened as the first in an editor group and more than one editor group is open, then the group is automatically locked. And here, as you can see, the terminals are enabled. So for example, if I then put this terminal here into its own editor group, then you can see it is automatically locked here. Okay, so that is the locked group function. And then lastly here we have this command to configure editors, and this simply opens the settings, filter down to settings related to the editor. Okay, so this is here this first side note, which is about the overflow menu. So now let's get to this last side note, which is about some customizations that you can do for the editor. So for example, via the menu bar you can toggle on or off word wrap. So for example, if I toggle this off, then these notes here are depicted on just one line. And if I toggle this on again, they are depicted across multiple lines. And then you can also do some adjustments via the settings. So for example, therefore, let's go here to the settings and then close the sidebar and this panel. And then here, if you go to text editor and cursor, then you can change some things about the cursor. So the blinking style, smooth caret animation, cursor style. And if you go to font, then you can change the font family, font ligatures, font size, and so on. And another setting that might be interesting are the line numbers. So if you search for line numbers, then here you can turn them, for example, completely off. or you can use relative. So this then depicts the line numbers relative to the cursor position. And then here the last option that you have is interval, which shows then the line numbers every 10 lines. So if I set this on and then here add some more lines, then you can see that the line numbers are depicted every 10th line. Okay, so now let's reset this. And then another setting that might be interesting is render white space. So by default it's set to selection. So if I here put a selection, then you can see here the white space within that selection. And here the other options are to use none. So if I depict none, then no white space are depicted. If you select boundary, then it renders white space characters except for single spaces between words. So here you can see those white spaces. However, between the words where there's just a single space, it's not depicted. Then if you select all, then it selects all the shows all the white spaces. And then here trailing, then it shows only trailing white space. Okay, so this is this white space setting. So let's again set this to the default. And with that now, we've covered here this note about some customizations. And with that now we have covered all the side notes. So now we've covered all the notes that I wanted to cover with respect to the editor. So then in the next video, we will go over the notes for the panel. So thanks for watching and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.